Hi, this is Amy Magyar from Within Coaching, and I am here today with some great help to unpack the CliftonStrengths of Maximizer. As always, we have Coach Augusta Good-Crawl with us. So hello, Coach. Thanks for coming again, being a part of this journey.
Favorite day of the week.
I love it. And then we also have our special guest who is also a coach with us, Coach Alex Hughes. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Alex. She has the strength of Maximizer. It's number 1. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what it's like to have Maximizer, which in getting ready for this, we just talked about Augusta and I really have theme envy on this one. I mean, this is like, oh boy. So this one will be fun to unpack. All right, let me do this. As always, I'm going to explain, at least according to CliftonStrengths, what it means to be a Maximizer. People strong in the Maximizer theme focus on strengths as a way to stimulate personal and group excellence. They seek to transform something strong into something superb. Basically, CliftonStrengths. That's what this is. That's what a Maximizer is. So I came up with a little alliteration, I think it is, when you use like the same alpha. So I looked at this as improvement, insight, and intuition. How I describe, and we'll talk a little bit more about why insight and also intuition. But Augusta, how would you describe Maximizer?
I really like the fact that Maximizer, for me, really talks about recognizing and unlocking potential. And that can be potential in others, potential in self, potential in a project. It's that striving for excellence. But in doing so, they have a gift of helping others kind of blossom into their potential. So it's that unlocking.
Yeah. And the fuel comes from them helping others unlock. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Again, the perfect CliftonStrengths coach. I mean, this is just, this has got coach written all over it. With that being said, Coach Alex, hello. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, as a Maximizer, how do you describe it to people if they say, what is a Maximizer, when you share that you have that as number 1? What do you say?
You know, it's such a good question because I think it's a really multifaceted strength. I love what Augusta said in kind of seeking out potential, or not even seeking it out, but just kind of being naturally able to see it in self, in others, in situations, in businesses, what have you. So it's that. And I also think maybe on more of a shallow level, perhaps, it's also an eye and a sense for quality. And that's something that I have kind of realized just kind of in preparation for this call, that I'm like, oh, yep, definitely that's always just kind of been part of me, and just like wanting the best one of the choices, and not to take away from any of the other ones, but just kind of knowing like, nope, that's the best one, and that's the one that I want. So yeah, I feel like I just kind of scratched the surface a little bit on that.
Well, as always, we could probably do this for about 5 hours,
Totally.
especially when we have a guest who this is their number 1 strength. But to limit it, we'll do it for about 20 minutes. I actually just set my alarm, so we've got a little bit more time, that's for sure. Alex, I think one of my favorite questions that has come up from this series has been, where did you notice Maximizer maybe when you were younger? Where did you see it? When you think back, where do you see it show up?
A couple of different areas. As I started to allude to, just kind of always wanting like the best in this or the best in that, and just kind of, again, that sense for quality, eye for quality. I felt like, you know, especially in kind of preteen years, typical 12, 13-year-old girl is like, I want all the clothes and all the fashion, blah, blah. And that was never really my MO. I was kind of like, well, I really like this one piece and it is my style, and like that's what I want. Like I want that. Rather than like, I don't know, just having a bunch of stuff to have a bunch of stuff.
Volume, right? No,
Mhm.
it was quality, not the quantity.
Totally. And that remains true to this day. You know, quick example, I'm much more likely to spend a chunk of money on, let's say, a winter coat that I know is going to last several years, rather than, you know, a cute one that's going to last me a season. So that's one example. And then some other examples, I grew up riding horses. So from the time, since I can remember, I was on horseback and did a lot of hunter jumping, and just was told early on, like, wow, you're really good at this. And typical maximizer, you want to take something that's really good and make it excellent, right?
Yeah.
Make it the best that it can possibly be. And so that was kind of my first introduction, I guess, into really being able to maximize something in myself, was being told and knowing like, you're good at this. And then going on to win and to just kind of take it as far as I could. Same thing with soccer. I started playing soccer when I was probably 5, and took that really far. Same thing, was told, hey, you're really good at this, and took that up to a regional team. So, you know, several things like that. Whereas other examples of things that, you know, I wasn't so great at, I swam and never really felt like I was keeping up with the pack. Same thing with cross country skiing. No one ever told me, oh, you're really good at this. And so I kind of was like, well, done with that. You know?
So to clarify, what's interesting is what it sounds like, Alex, is when somebody says to you, you're really good at that, that didn't scare you away. And there are some people that find when they've been told you're really good at it, the immediate thought is, I've fooled them. But it sounds like this is more, when you were told that, it was for you, great, I'm going to take it to the next level, versus I've got them fooled.
Maybe. And I also think that I kind of knew that of myself. So again, it's recognizing that in self too.
Yes.
Because there are certainly situations in my life where people have been like, you're really good at that. Like, well, I'm not. So I think it's when I know,
You know,
and then when it's also recognized by others, and maybe it doesn't even have to be recognized by others. But again, these things started when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so having other people say, like, you have a talent, you're good at this. Yes. I mean, that's fuel for me.
Yeah.
That's total fuel in anything. I mean, these days it's writing, or it's speaking, or even just, for those listening, I used to teach cycling classes, and so spent a great deal of time on a microphone. And I would be told every time that I taught a class, like, wow, are you on the radio? You have just this great voice for radio. And so, like, of course, now I'm like, okay, how do I, like, I want to do something with that now, you know? So I think, you know, the more awareness I have around this strength of maximizer, the more I kind of am able to look at situations and be like, oh, that's what that is. Totally.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing with everyone what your 5 strengths are?
Yeah. So maximizer is my number 1. And what's interesting is that I've taken this assessment several times, and that one has been unwavering. That's always been my number 1. My second one is individualization. And that one's always been in the top 5 too. And I think it's kind of flip-flop from second to third.
Yeah.
Third, I have command, and that's always been there also. Yeah. Fourth, I have ideation, and then fifth, I have strategic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they've all, now that I think about it, I don't remember the results of the previous assessment that I took, but I know that those 5 have been consistently, at least within my top 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What questions do you have, Augusta? for
Yeah.
our maximizer.
Especially knowing your top strengths, even your top three, and knowing a little bit about you, Alex. You talked about when you were teaching the spinning classes. Um, I want to ask you about, I know there was a time when you were actually teaching other people how to become spin instructors. And so I'm bringing this up because when I think of maximizer in different realms, I do see somebody who is or could be like a mentor or teacher position. I mean, there's coach too. I mean, maximizer is such a powerful top strength to have. But when maximizer plays with individualistic, like you have as number two, that was that an area that I felt like you really shined in helping others, because that's part of the definition of maximizer, is helping others see their strengths in a way that allows them to unlock that potential. So have there been other instances in your life or in jobs where you can see how your strengths, and even with command showing up there, played together? And
Yeah, gosh, it's a tough question. I think most of my working life has been in and around a cycling studio. I kind of started doing that right out of college. And so to think back in kind of other scenarios, I have always, I think I've always kind of been someone that people go to as just kind of as an ear. That has always been, I'm just kind of a receptacle, I think, for a lot of people in my orbit. And I say that in a good way. It's an honor. And so I don't know really if that answers the question, but
no, that does in a way, because even being that person, again, it's when I think of maximizer, some people will see a finished product or a, whatever their work might be, or a situation, and say, okay, well, that's good. And you can be somebody who's like, oh no, wait, we can go up, one more level. And so I'm just wondering if maybe that's how that's showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps to the chagrin of some people who confide in me. They're like, okay, I get it, but like, I just want to be where I am right now. Yeah. Stop.
That's funny.
So yeah, and what's interesting is that I sometimes don't have that same enthusiasm for my own growth, or it has to be the right thing, right? Like if coaching, for example, I never got any kind of certification or training. And so I think, while other people will say, God, you're an amazing coach, it's like, yeah, but I haven't really done it. I don't have the experience. I don't see it in myself so much. And so I haven't really taken it from where it is now to where it possibly could be. And I kind of lost myself.
Yeah, no, but that's so interesting, because I mean, my thought about that would be, of course, we talk about strengths, you talk about strengths with others, is that knowing that there doesn't need to be a degree when you've got the inherent innate ability to show up in the way that you do with your top 5 strengths.
Yeah.
That's excellence right there, like somebody with a degree who has, gosh, I don't know what 5 strengths would be, not conducive so much to a situation like coaching or whatever it is that you're interested in. It's that trust in that is your innate being, and how you.
And I agree with you. I don't believe that anyone needs, maybe I shouldn't say anyone, but I think it's possible to do so much without certifications or degrees. I mean, so much is possible. And I think also you have to have that belief in yourself. And I certainly do, but I think perhaps that's kind of a key factor in maximizer, is that if you don't see it already, if it's not already good and established, you're kind of not going to do much with it. And so it's like, if I had grown up as a coach somehow, or if I had this other example of myself as a coach, that was really good, and then I could build on that and make it excellent, that's one thing. and that goes for anything, you know, that I think that is kind of the inherent trait of maximizer. If it's not already good, I think maximizers tend to not want to spend a whole lot of time on it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. You know, that's actually an important trait in maximizers, from my interpretation of everything that I've read and understood, is that they are fueled by taking things that are already of high quality and taking that to the best possible quality, versus taking something that's average and making it good or a little bit better than average. You know, that second examples for a maximizer, I think, just takes so much energy, and to a maximizer doesn't really feel worth the time and output.
Yeah. Alex, I wrote something down that a little quote that I read. Maximizers are easily satisfied with the very best. A little wordplay there, right? They're not easily satisfied, but they are easily satisfied with the very best. That's when they're easily satisfied. And I thought that was so beautifully said about, you know, I think one of the things I had mentioned, that maximizer for me was sort of improvement, insight and intuition, is that I think often with maximizers, there's an insight or an intuition that they have in seeing what's already good. You take individualization, to Augusta's point of taking those and looking at some of their strengths, individualization, that you really make sure that everybody feels unique in a good way and their diversity is celebrated, and then throw that in with strategic. You're able to see it really quickly, and then, you know, again, the DNA is there for a coach-like approach. Even if Alex had never become a coach or decides not to be a coach moving forward, she will always have that scan. She will always be looking for that in people, and even sometimes even in things or how something is done. And I think that that's a neat way of us kind of showing some of the other strengths that you have and how they're layered on. And it just makes it, your superpowers, even bigger.
Yeah, superpowers, and also sometimes super detriments, right?
How so?
Because that's pretty limiting when you're satisfied with only the best. And I say that purely as like a factual part of maximizer, not as an inherent trait of everyone with maximizer. But I think, you know, when your standard is so high and you can't help it because you know that more is possible, it's hard to be where you are when you know that there's so much more that is achievable or waiting for you, or, you know, on the other side of this effort. It can kind of pull you out of the present, I think, sometimes, and that becomes a roadblock. I'm experiencing that kind of right now, in that there are things that I know I kind of have to do to get to this next level, career-wise, but the things that I have to do aren't the best, and I don't really want to do them. And it's like, I know what's on the other side of those things, and I just want to be there, and to spend this time kind of taking what isn't already established and well established is like, it's just so much energy.
Yeah.
And
note to self for maximizers listening, one of the things that just came up for me that I've never said out loud, but I think maybe needs to be said, is we think about activators who are amazing at starting things, achievers who are amazing at ending things. It's almost like maximizer is if somebody has maximizer on your team, put them in the middle of something and let them elevate it to the next step, right? Versus starting with nothing, right? So similar to an achiever, unless they have activator, they're not going to be that stoked with starting something, but they'll be so happy to end it. And I almost feel like if you have a maximizer on your staff, pull them into the middle of a project, especially with strategic and individualization and command, and let them have at it. And look to see, are you heading the right direction? What's happening? How can they take that to the next level? and then maybe hand it off to an achiever, and you're off and you're done.
Totally. My God, that's like the story of my life. Like, I would love to own my own business, but my God, I don't want to start it. Like, if someone could start it for me, that would be great, and I'll take it to the stars.
There you go. What a great insight, though, and that is wonderful, Amy. Like, land in the middle.
Yeah. That's so true, that actually starting something, activating something, getting something off the ground is not a strong suit for Maximizer.
So what I will say is this, is that it's not that Alex can't start something. It's it's not where her fuel comes from, right? And so anytime we look at our strengths, we look at them to say, how can you set up your environment so that you are using them to fuel you, right? Again, I don't always love to end a project. It's not where I get my excitement from. Put me more on the front half and sort of looking at what's missing. So this is a great example of that, of Alex will have to start something. I mean, she has already historically, but that's not where she gets her energy. So folks, if you if you're a leader and you have Maximizer, let me just say this, not everybody thinks the same way you do. And that's the important thing to kind of understand, is that our strengths can be dialed up and dialed down, and often can be, as you so beautifully said, Alex, this is sort of a roadblock at times when we have things, when only one of the strengths is really firing and not letting the other strengths kind of play. It's like your internal organs, you're only using one and the other ones are kind of like, hey, can I be a part of this? So it's something to think about. Looking at the time and realizing that we are getting a little bit closer to, and we could talk for 5 hours. Alex, tell me this. When you think about maximizers out in the world who are just realizing that they are maximizers, what's something important for them to know as they're navigating this new journey of understanding what maximizer means?
I think a lot of it is what you just touched on, is that taking something that is already well established and then being able to make it into the best that it can be, that those are the opportunities to look for. I think I will always kind of be navigating, what does it mean to be a maximizer, and how can I be using this strength right now? So maybe that's just more of a general thing too, for everybody learning their strengths. Like, you don't just learn one day what it all means and then you're able to apply it all the time. It's like so many things, it's kind of an evolution of understanding. But for Maximizer specifically, I think the one thing that continues to help me understand myself and then position myself accordingly is that I don't do well taking stuff from the ground up. I need something, I need some more structure than that, and then I need the freedom to do what I do and make it better.
Right. Yeah. And let me just say, both command and maximizer, if you have somebody with either one of those on your team, rarely do you need to micromanage them. Never do you need to micromanage them, because they have this drive to make it happen and to show up and to be the best that they can be. And so that's something to realize, right? As you're interviewing for what may be next, is also looking to say, sharing an interview as a maximizer, I do enjoy having the freedom of being able to be able in a project to have, maybe bumper guards on the ends or on the sides, but space, right?
Right. And not even enjoy that role, but thrive in that role. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's super important, because gosh, you take any maximizer and you tell them what you want your company or your event or whatever it is, tell them what you want it to look like. If you've already kind of laid the groundwork, they will take it from your dreamiest dream and make it even better. I think that is maximizer.
It's funny that the thought that just came into my mind is they're the perfect party event manager or a wedding planner. I mean,
Mm.
you know, boom.
Yeah.
Speaking of events that could, you know,
Good. Yeah.
yeah. Augusta,
Totally.
I want to make sure I save a little space for you at the end here. Questions, ideas, thoughts. What's coming up for you when you think about Maximizer or hearing what Alex is sharing?
Just again, just appreciating so much, the strengths discussion and helping people understand what their strengths are so that they can position themselves, in career or in situations or with partners, that really, help them. They understand maybe why they might be frustrated or why they're thriving, and the thriving is what we're all looking for. And so it's such beautiful examples and speak to how, when we know what our strengths are, we can have more awareness around, oh, so that's why maybe that didn't work out so well. Right? I was tasked to being a maximizer to start a project.
Mm.
Right.
Managed. So I just, I always love hearing how these strengths show up for people and the awarenesses.
Yeah. And to your point, in so many ways, Maximizer capitalizes on the gifts of, not the lack of, right? So as they're helping people be the best, it's not because they're not good. They're not broken. They don't, maximizers don't look at it as this is broken. It's good. It's just there's so much more that is possible. And I mean, talk about having somebody on your team that has that belief in anything that you do. We're lucky enough to have Alex have Maximizer as number one. She's constantly reminding me, for both personally as well as the organization, of not so much what we can be, but to believe in what we have, right? And believe in what's possible, but not in a way of you're not enough. So I want to just clarify that, as maximizers don't look at you as you're not enough. It's you were amazing. And let's take that amazing to another level, because it just is, I see so much possibility for you. So
Yeah, before we close out, I have to just add this, because
please.
I think there is often some confusion between maximizer and competition. For me anyway, when I was kind of first learning about strengths. And the example that I can best explain it with is I grew up with an older sister who had a lot of the same interests as me, and particularly with soccer and academics. She set such a strong example, and I saw the way she did it, and I was like, wow, like she did it that way, and how can I do what she's doing and make it even better? But not as a means of competition, not as a means of comparison, not as like, oh, I'm better than that, but as, okay, this is really good, and it can be even better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. The fuel came from not competing with her to be better, but it's the fuel that came from what's possible in the sport, or what's possible in my body.
Being inspired. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that was that we maximize that. Again, if you have someone that has a maximizer, if you have a maximizer on your team, you are a maximizer, there's so much to learn from these times where unpacking and sharing and really looking at not only that theme and how it's become a strength for that person, but also how it interacts, as we've done a little bit today, with some of the others. So this session is not designed to be in lieu of a coaching session, but in fact, maybe in addition to. So we definitely recommend, I should really be letting Alex say this, is recommending a coaching session to take you from here to here and what's possible in all of your strengths. But Alex, I'm so grateful that my dear mentor introduced me to Strength Finders and now CliftonStrengths, and that I had an opportunity to introduce you to it, because little did I know that I was sort of introducing painting to Leonardo da Vinci, but I did. So it's a little humbling, but she takes it to a whole other level. Thank you for being a part of this. We will see you on a couple of other of these, and keep unpacking strengths.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you again, Augusta.
Yeah. Bye, guys.